Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this. It's going to be a tough conversation, but it's going to be very rewarding and really fulfilling. I have Carol Henderson here with me and Kristen Rademacher, and these people are offering their souls, I feel. It's one of the toughest things that I've been through is having a miscarriage at 3 months, and I heard the baby's heartbeat. And I went through trauma. Even 26 years later, I still feel, it was a tremendous grief, and I don't think enough people talk about it or understand it. So I am pleased and so grateful that Kristen and Carol can be with us here today to talk about how to cope and how to process everything. So I would like to introduce Kristen in the red. You look gorgeous this morning. How are you? Well, it's afternoon.
I'm very well. Thank you. And that's very generous of you, but thank you.
No, it's generous of you both to be here. Do you have, do you want to just give us a little details about you? I know you are a writer and you live in Chapel Hill. And can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
That is true. I live in Chapel Hill. My day job is as an academic coach and ADHD specialist at UNC, and I do a ton of one-on-one work with college students and a bunch of other things as well. And I've been in Chapel Hill since 2002, and I met Carol in 2005, and Carol was instrumental in getting my memoir out of my brain and heart and into the world.
Fantastic. So Carol, welcome. And you are also in North Carolina, correct?
Yes, I'm also in Chapel Hill. This was just an amazing coincidence. I think Kristen said she read the book about the life and death of my son that was published in 2001. And then she suddenly realized, oh my gosh, we're in the same town and she's teaching a workshop. I think I'll sign up.
Tina, could you get Josh to stop talking?
And at that point it was a journaling workshop that I was like an 8-week journaling workshop. And I'm not sure, I don't think Kristen remembers this, but I would give prompts and people would write and then they would read. And she started out very sort of, bright and cheerful and writing about this and that. But eventually some of the prompts took her deeper, and she wrote one piece about being in the shower and feeling her postpartum body and her, her saggy, her leaky breasts and her, her tummy without her baby, and she was without her baby. And it was just this most amazing piece. And the whole room was just kind of stunned and staggered and so moved by her writing. And that was the beginning. And then she joined another writing group. I offer writing groups of all kinds. She was in a creative nonfiction group. And, I also do a lot of bereavement writing workshops around the country and the world, actually. And so she joined she joined a creative fiction and not workshop. And she was just playing around with some essays, and the subject matter of this book just kept sort of coming up again and again. And those in the group were saying, you've got something here. This is really a very compelling and beautiful story that you're writing about your stillborn child. And so she just kept going.
Yeah.
And then I'll turn it over to her.
Yeah. I would say that it felt like to me, and this, I don't want it to sound too woo-woo, but it just felt like this, I was meant to meet Carol. I read her book about her loss, maybe like 3 weeks after mine. And it was really helpful. And it gave me a vision, a model of what coping and grieving can look like. And then when I discovered that she was local, I had been doing a ton of journaling at the time, so it was a good fit for where I was in my life. But I also just wanted to be in a room with another mother who had lost a baby. I hadn't really done that much. And so I just kind of skulked into the first session, and I was participating, as Carol said, but I was also really just looking at Carol like, wow, look at her. She's fine. She's living her life. And it was just really helpful for me to see Carol years later, because I was right at the very beginning of my loss when I first joined. So that was another reason I joined the group, Carol. I just wanted to be in a room with someone who would have an idea of what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in here too. I remember thinking like, oh, you had a miscarriage. You don't know the baby. You're not in love with the baby. But then, that was before I had the miscarriage. And then I had the miscarriage and I understood, because you have so much hopes and dreams and you do love that baby before it's even born. And you're a mother from the moment you feel like you are, and you can't take that away from somebody. So, a stillborn baby, I can't even imagine going the whole 9 months or 10 months and having the baby and not having the baby, it's just, and then your bodies and your hormones and everything are just going crazy. So the fact that you needed to be around somebody is totally understandable. And what did you think, Carol, when you met her?
Well, I didn't know in the beginning. She was very, hush hush about her personal experience, but it was just only when I think maybe somehow something kind of leaked out in this piece of writing, or she felt safe enough within the group to be able to write something that really was directly about her, postpartum, complete desolation, and just taking the act of taking a shower. I mean, who knows what the prompt was? Write about an activity or something that has somehow changed you, or I don't know what it was. And she wrote this, and it was really much later when I learned more about her, and I guess she knew more about me at the time because my book had already been out. But I think there's something that happens when women who have lost children find each other and either write together or talk together or do some kind of social activity together that's related to their losses. These bonds just really, really adhere, and we just have a special connection. I think, as Kristen would say too, it's a club nobody wants to be a member of, but once you're a member, you really need the other members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do. And you know what? We're stronger together than we are apart. There's so many women that cut each other down, but we're so much stronger together, and it's Women's Month. So to bring the two of you together and to see how much you fulfilled each other and supported each other, because it's a long haul. It's for life. It's not a club you can ever get away from, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would also just like to say that so in the writing group that I eventually joined with Carol, and it was many years that I was part of this group, and I know someone who was watching today is from the group as well. It was such a special group, and Carol really helped to create a space where we were all working on memoirs. And I felt like for me, little by little, I kept sharing a little bit more. And I thought, this is the moment where they're going to say too much. I don't want to know anymore. It's too hard. It's too sad. It's too something. Because I was really struggling with, at the time, trying to figure out how to share this really huge thing that happened to me without possibly making people freak out. But this group was so instrumental in allowing me to voice my story fully, but a little bit at a time. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, when I decided to publish this memoir, I feel like I was well prepared by the reception that I received from this wonderful group of women. But it was really hard for me. And I just, there's something, as Carol said, about being with other women in general, but being with another woman who's understood what the loss is like. And it sort of gave me the green light to just put myself out there in a way that I never imagined that I would.
Yeah. Well, you described that too, but I've read books where it's like the whole concept of the book sounds thrilling, or not thrilling, but just you want to immerse yourself in it. You want to read about something that's taking you to somewhere you've never been, whether it's emotionally or physically. You want that. You want too much information because you want it to feel real. You don't want somebody to hold back. So Carol, when you saw that, and did you know how she felt, like she wanted to keep it back, or did you want to, make her pull everything out?
I think she felt, from the encouragement within the group, she felt she could dig deeper and pull things out. She and I are both basically introverted people with very extroverted lives.
Writers are, yes.
And so for her to just continue, to just kind of like bring this stuff and read it and get the support from everyone in the group. I mean, just it allowed her to really come forward with her story in, I think, probably the most authentic way she could have, because she wasn't holding back or feeling like, oh, these women can't take this, and what am I going to do? I can't even read this, or I can't share this. So I think she was really able to get beyond that, and then to be able to write this absolutely beautiful book that I highly recommend.
It's very heartfelt. It's really
it's very heartfelt. It's very accessible for anyone who has experienced any kind of loss, or even not, because she's so astute in her observations about her surroundings, her reactions, the natural world, and she grows into this as she goes along. She more deeply understands herself and her spiritual self. She starts out kind of bouncing around, new boyfriend, I'm getting out of there, all this stuff, and then it's just we're drawn into this deeper and deeper experience, and it's just really and then it ends in this absolutely transformative, hopeful way that I think will be useful to anybody, and especially if you know someone who has lost anyone. I think there are examples in this book that can be helpful, ways to commemorate, ways to stay. She does a really good job of keeping her baby Carly as connected to her. I mean, she's still connected to her. She should say that, but we see this. Her life has just been really changed by being Carly's mother and having Carly with her all the time, as like a spirit guide. And for some people, this might sound like, what are you talking about? But it's really true. And she shows it so beautifully that
Carol,
anyone would believe it and want to go along. I mean, I knew what was coming, and I knew how hard it was going to be, but because she wrote so well and so fully and with a real confidence that she really had control of what she was writing. I think, she had gone through the enough drafts and enough self exploration that she was able to make it a really accessible and rich book for any reader. I don't think anyone would say, I can't read another chapter of this. Or if they found themselves in that spot, they maybe would think about, well, what's going on with me that I can't do this?
Yeah.
So very impressive.
I'm very impressed too, because you really gave it.
Thank you both
so much. So you start off with journaling. Can you tell us about that process and how you got there?
Yeah, well, I'd always done journaling, kind of on and off as an adult, actually even as a young child. And then a few weeks after I lost Carly, I had some childhood friends come to visit, and one of them gave me a brand new journal with a message inside that said, this is for you to write about your feelings when they're ready to flow. And I really took that as a clear, I'm going to do this. This is an invitation. And I started to do it, and I found it so incredibly helpful in a way that I hadn't predicted. And it became almost this necessary obsession. I had to write in this journal every single day as a way to have a place to process my feelings safely, because they were so raw and so overwhelming. And it didn't even feel like I could say it all out loud to someone else. Mm-hmm. But a journal is not going to respond. A journal is right there for you. So it gave me a place to see and understand what I was feeling. I also used it as a place to start writing little letters to Carly, which at first felt a little like, what am I doing? I'm becoming that weird person. But that also became very, very comforting to me as well. So my journal, that first year or so, was just like an appendage to me. It was a very clear piece of one of the clear things that I did that really helped me get through that first year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I joined Carol's journaling class, because I was like knee deep in it at the time when I saw her class, and I thought, this is great. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. So I just have these stacks of journals that I had written during those first couple of years, and they were very instrumental in helping me write my memoir, because there was all my raw feelings for me to research, because I didn't start writing my memoir really in earnest until a good 10 years later, I think. So it was extremely helpful to have that material there for me to kind of mine through.
And how about you, Carol?
Very often you don't, if you don't record as you go along, you lose so much of what you're experiencing, and where just, what you're seeing, how you're feeling things, little conversations between people that 10 years later, she and I both waited some time before writing our book. So she had this trove of feelings and descriptions and experiences to be able to go back through and then be able to take a shape into a memoir form. And so I think we would both highly recommend journaling just in general as a way of grounding oneself and putting down on the page which is in our heads and just swirling around in there. And once you put it down, it then first of all, the act of doing that is absorbing and engaging, and it really you begin to have a subject that you want to describe more, and you can begin to sort of reframe or re-see your problems as you go over what you've written. And your mind will really just spill out stuff that you half the time, Kristen, don't you feel this? Even your thinking doesn't want to go there. Mm-hmm. Once you start writing, it changes your relationship eventually to the event or to whatever the feeling is. So when I think for anyone who's experienced like a traumatic loss, the feelings are just overwhelming and raw. And you can just feel like you're held hostage by them. And by writing about them, eventually it separates it a little bit from inside of you, so you can start to relate to it a little bit different. And I think that is really a powerful way to start healing as well. It's like, I've had this hard experience, and by writing, I'm watching myself a little bit having this experience, which is a little bit empowering. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's sort of what it felt like to me in retrospect.
So when you write your journals, how do you put it all together to put it into a memoir? And what did you experience while you were going through that? Did you relive some of those tragic moments? Did you look at some of your writing and say, I didn't understand I felt that way, but did you experience any deja vu or any special feelings to any of those things?
Yes, to all of that. And I think for me, when I decided, with the help of my writing group, let's write the whole story. My first drafts were so much more than what I ended up publishing. There was so much more that I didn't actually end up writing about. So I relived the whole. My book starts with me in Boston, and I had this terrible breakup and ended up in North Carolina in a rebound relationship. That's the Reader's Digest version of my book. But I went into all this detail about Boston and leaving Boston and first settling. And so that was an interesting process to sort of get it all out first. And then finding the shape of the memoir took some time, figuring out what really is essential here. What are the key parts of the story that are important. And then certainly for me, writing some of the most challenging scenes for me to write were about the delivery of my baby, and I don't think there was ever a time where I would reread that. And of course, as a writer, you're drafting over and over and over again. So I had to revisit that over and over again. And I wouldn't say that it ever got easier. I would say it was, it was hard every time that I read it. I don't know if you feel the same way with your experience, Carol, but it's such a visceral experience, and just seeing it chronologically laid out on the page, it's not my most fun time.
Yeah, I found that my child died in a second open heart surgery, and whenever I got to that point in the book, when I was doing revisions, I would just become paralyzed and stop and not be able to write for a while, and sometimes months. I just couldn't face it, because what I really wanted to write was the Disney version. And this baby goes through this miracle surgery and is fine, and it's all great. And that's not what happened. So it would take me a long time, and it was very painful. And there is something, I think we do re-traumatize ourselves somewhat when we go back over what we've written, but we can write more. We can write about what that feels like. And there's some relief in that, and getting those thoughts out on the page. And eventually we can face these really difficult moments and get through the writing of them.
Yeah. Did you notice yourself growing through it? Like, you notice yourself changing even little by little when you do go through it?
Mm-hmm.
Proud of yourself.
Yeah, that definitely was my experience. I remember all the journaling that I did that first year. There are entries that I remember writing, and I can sort of picture them on the page, where I was writing down, I am growing, I am changing, I am transforming. I don't know what I'm changing into, but I was very aware that I was going through this transformative experience, and not knowing what the end result would be, as if there's ever an end. There's not really. But I knew that my life had blown up in so many ways in such a short period of time, and that I could feel pieces of myself sort of drifting off. So it was this weird sort of no man's land that I was in while I was in this first year of rebuilding my life, because the father of Carly and I ended up splitting up about 6 months afterwards. So it really was a time of great loss. But from great loss can come all kinds of growth and change. And I knew something was going to come of that. I just didn't know what. So that was interesting for me.
Yeah, because a lot of times you hit that rock bottom and you don't think you come up from it. So for you to have hope even then is remarkable. How did you feel, Carol? Were you going through the same thing, or?
I was. It was, several years again, like Kristen. By the time I wrote the memoir, my son died in 1982, and the book was published in 2001. It took me about 8 years to write, half the time, because I'd get to the part where he died, and I'd have to put it down for 6 months before I could come back to it. But I did feel the shape. I did feel myself changing as I wrote, and I felt deeply connected to my son as I wrote, and that was that probably was one of the. I would almost hear him breathing in my ear. Didn't get to that part, but whatever, I felt him there with me, and I wanted to honor him and give his little short life story the most that I could, because that's what I could do to commemorate him. And so I felt my experience, I felt my my love for him growing. And I did it. Kristen and I both sort of tracked our children, have continued to track our children through their lives. Like, where would they be now? And we still, I mean, my son would be 38 years old and I still write letters to him and I still feel guidance from him. And people say, what are you talking about? This is like a 6-week-old baby, but it's a spiritual experience. But I would never have had anything like this had I not put pen to paper. I mean, I don't know, maybe there would have been something else. I just read an article about a woman whose best friend died by suicide. And so the woman, the survivor, started going to these meetings up in Canada with people who were deciding to end their own lives, and it's legal up there. And she felt my friend would want me here because she was so loving and so non-judgmental and so caring. Mm-hmm. She found her friend through that activity. I think Kristen and I both found our purpose in a way, or through our children. Mm-hmm. In the way, she took that particular type of action, and she was also researching a book at the time, a novel. So I think all of this appears in the book as well, in some form. I'm not sure, but.
So that turns into my question next is, how did you want to, journals are very intimate and private. You don't really think anybody else is going to read them. How did you feel about getting the book published, which is a hard thing because you get a lot of rejections from a lot of different publishers. You get other people reading it, and as introverts, were you afraid to get some reactions to people, but what made you decide to give your soul to so many people?
I will be happy to speak to that because it's fresh for me. My book was published in July of 2020. Without a doubt, publishing it was far easier than writing the book.
Really?
No. Other way around. Writing the book was far easier than publishing. I was a wreck all spring. An interesting time to put this book out in the middle of the pandemic when the world is also falling apart. And I thought, who's going to want to read my book about losing a baby when so much is going on in the world? That aside, as Carol said, I'm very introverted and very private, and I have a very extroverted job. So I know how to do it. Mm-hmm. But this felt just extremely anxiety provoking. I thought, I've lucked out so far. I've shared my book with my writing group and they all thought it was fine and good. But now the rest of the world's going to read it and all the judgment's going to come in. Mm-hmm. So there's work for me to do there about my fear of judgment, clearly. But it didn't happen. The opposite happened. I've got it. It's been really warmly received. And so I'm grateful for that. But there were times where I was just lying in my bed in the middle of the day thinking, I let these horses out of the barn and I want them back in. And I don't know how to do that.
So was your worst fear recognized? Did that actually happen?
No,
not
at all.
See, for all you people out there wanting to write a book, that's what you should be doing. And Carol, what about you?
I had similar, night sweats about publishing this book, having it come out. There were, some not pretty parts of my family that came out about this, having been brought up this uptight wasp who had never even been to a funeral, never seen a dead body. I'd been so protected from this that we didn't talk about death in my house. We didn't take casseroles to the bereaved. We were very much keep your own counsel type people. And so I thought, my family is just going to absolutely freak out when they read this thing, because I'm kind of I'm exposing that part of our life. And yet they didn't. I expected, but it sort of opened up a family conversation where my sister said, my best friend died when I was 12 and I was afraid to say anything about it to the family. And I celebrate her on her birthday every year. And I'm at the time the book came out, she said, and I'm in my 50s and I'm still doing that. So she revealed, people had they revealed themselves through it. And I think probably Kristen has found that too. People are so appreciative that someone has been brave, because then they can be brave.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the message I got a lot was, you're so brave. This is courageous. It's going to help people. And the truth of that was lodged somewhere beneath my anxiety. So I would hold on to that and hope that I would actually feel that. And I eventually did feel it. But while I was waiting for the book to be released, it really felt like it was just very hard for me. And I'm part of this, the place I published with is a group of women writers, and everyone's on Facebook and celebrating my book is out, and they'd hold up their books, and they were so celebratory. And I was like, I'm not going to take any pictures of me in my book. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. This is my own psychological quirk. But I had a very different response to the fellow authors that I was watching in Facebook who were popping the champagne bottle, and I was hiding in my bed. I'm fine now.
But did they have different topics that they wrote about, right?
Oh, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But not this topic, probably,
Right.
Not death and grief and survival, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are so many people going through it, and there's so many people that come into our store and ask for that perfect book to help somebody with this. And your books will have a permanent place on my shelf because of that, because I need there to be that link to other people, and I think that's what the hardest part about the pandemic has been, is that we don't have the link to have a hug or a conversation with people, because Zoom is fine, but when you're in front of somebody and you're able to off the hand ask questions, it makes it more real and relatable, and we all really need that, so your books will, like I said, have a permanent place on our shelf. Is there, yeah, you're welcome. Did you have any reactions, like, did you save somebody's life? Because when you're going through something as personal as this and nobody understands, and most people don't talk about death, even though it's a part of life. We don't pre-plan funerals. We don't, as a society, we just don't take care of our own going through this, probably the most horrible experience of our lives. Did you have any reactions like that were like, thank you? Were there any stories that you want to share with that?
Carol, your perspective on this, because your book has been out so much longer, and you've got another book, and you've done your whole professional life sort of changed because of this. And I think you're probably saving lots of people's lives.
Well, I did find it. And Kristen, I hope you get this opportunity once everybody's vaccinated and we're out and about, that you can actually have some in-person readings. Mm-hmm. Where people could just come up and talk to you afterwards, because I found that I remember before my first reading, I practiced with my husband and my daughter, and I couldn't even get through the sections that I had planned to read, and I thought, oh my God, forget it. There's no way I'm going to do it. But somehow I found the strength to do that, and then people approached me and said, I too, our son died, these teary-eyed people, all different kinds of people, young people. They look like they should have been, cheerleaders, a little young couple, and then older people. And I lost a grandchild. What can I do? I mean, they kind of turn to you as some kind of a specialist because you've written a book. And that's when, and I said to people, eventually, at first I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't know what, and then I realized, no, wait, you can write your story, write what it is that you're dealing with, that you're grappling with now, and share it with people and get it out there. And so from that, I began offering a lot of bereavement writing workshops, because I saw there was such a need, and there were so many people willing, interested or tentative or something about doing this. And many of them would say I had to, I turned around and went home about 4 times before I showed up at the workshop, but they finally would get there and then begin writing about their experiences. And then, people took off from there. So yeah, there was that. I had just been a columnist and teaching, journaling and a little creative nonfiction. And then this whole other niche just sort of opened up as a result of the book. And I'm hoping that Kristen, I think it's really hard during a pandemic for things to open up, but it sounds like maybe pretty soon you'll really be able to get out there and get to some bookstores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
bookstores are going to be opening and
Yeah.
really, meet people in person. And I think that will really help them and offer you new avenues that you hadn't even thought of about where you might be able to go with this book, how you might use it to help others in other ways. So I look forward to that for you.
Thank you. Yes, I think there's lots of opportunity, and as you said, there are a lot of people out there who would benefit from, if nothing else, just a conversation. As a starting point, just a conversation to say, "Hey, this happened to me, and it was hard." That can be a real opening for someone to start to heal. Healing. There's only so much healing you can do by yourself. It really takes other people and sort of bringing it out into the light for real change to happen. So I agree with what you're saying, Carol.
Yeah.
And that's how I originally met you, Kristen. We were talking about having you do a writing workshop. I would love to have both of you do a writing workshop. We have so many people that are home right now and writing, and a lot of pain has come out of this pandemic where people are realizing they've stopped the hustle and bustle and like running to everything. So they've actually had time to sit and be home, and alcohol sales are up 140%. But besides that, people are also reflecting on their lives. I think people are just reacting to things in a different way than we ever have, because it's been 100 years since we last had a pandemic. But I think journaling and writing prompts and writing is it's a positive way to get through life. And so we'll definitely have you both.
Oh, thanks.
Writing
that sounds great. And as Kristen said, it's one thing to write it, and then it's a whole other level to share it.
Yes.
To share these intimate writings, and other level of depth and healing could come from that.
Yes.
I remember this just came to me, Carol. Let's see if you remember this. This is related. I attended you did a 1-day bereaved mother writing thing at your house, and I joined, and we were journaling all day, and it was very hard. We were just all sort of steeped in emotion, and so did that. And then about 2 or 3 years later, I ran into, I don't remember who the person was, but I ran into someone who was there at that day. And she said to me that something that I had shared, we were journaling all day and we were reading it out loud. Something that I had shared really stuck with her and shifted her. And I was like, well, good. Thank you. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember what I had written, but it spoke to the power of sharing and of writing. You never know how you're going to impact someone else. I think that's just true in any way, shape, or form. But in this sort of thing, you never know how sharing a piece of your own sorrow can land in someone else who's feeling sorrow and sort of mix things up for them somehow. So I don't know if you recall that, Carol, but
yeah, I do. I remember that workshop. I remember you're telling me about that experience. Yeah. It's pretty, it's magical, and it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily make sense. Although there have been a lot of studies. This guy, James Pennebaker, out of the University of Austin in Texas, has written a lot about the powerful aspects of writing. And he has actually done things like put stuff on people's brains and tested their T cell production. And when people write about really deep and important matters, it's good for their health. It's good for our immunity. It's good for our perspective. And there are clinical or whatever you call them studies that really confirm this now. It's not just speculative.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kristen and I will both highly recommend it.
Yes.
Everyone. I wrote about 4 pages this morning before we got started, just to kind of get grounded and, a little more clarity about doing this, So.
Do you have any advice for people that have just recently gone through, as a mom, and as a parent that has lost a child? Do you have any advice or gentle thoughts, like be kind to yourself. I both hear you both being self-deprecating. So I wish more people were kind to ourselves because it's a hard thing. And, but do you have any advice for other parents?
I remember very clearly, it was like the day or the second or third day that I came home from the hospital. So I had delivered Carly and I was home, and people were calling me all day. It was wonderful. And my aunt, who I hadn't seen in years and still haven't seen her, she called and was very frank with me and said, "This is going to be hard." And I was so grateful just to have that sort of candor, just, nothing sort of saccharine, like, this is hard, but you have an angel now who's going to be looking after you. And I don't fault anyone for saying those sorts of things, but someone just to say, this is going to be hard. You are going to get through it. But, you've gone through a major experience right now. And I'm with you in spirit, and be prepared for kind of the long road ahead. And looking back, I really appreciate that. I really thought that was exactly what I needed. It helped me kind of steel myself for the road ahead.
People can say some awful things, and I know they don't mean to, but to say it was the best thing, or, I know people don't know what to say, but to acknowledge, I'm really sorry you went through this, or this is going to be real. This sucks. I think those are the best words to say. Tell them how you honestly feel, because sugarcoating it makes it worse. It makes you feel like you shouldn't be talking about this. Like, you're going to be fine. It's all going to be a couple months. You'll have another baby. It's just,
that was the worst. Say that to
they'd say, you're only given what you can handle in life. And, God's now your baby's with God. Well, I'm agnostic, so that's not going to ring for me. True. And I mean, I just think, I'm sorry. I feel for you, and, I'm here. If you want to talk. Yeah. And I just saw, I don't know if any of you watched this woman on MSNBC does a show, Lives Well Lived, about people who've died from the coronavirus. And last night she did an hour-long program, and she had two young widows who've lost their husbands in the last year. They have little children and stuff. And one of them started a Facebook group, and they both said, we don't need advice. We don't need to be told, do this, do that. We just need you to witness, to listen to us, to hear our stories, to just them in. Don't have to say, oh my God, well, I can help you with that. Maybe we could, no, just be there. Just listen. Just absorb without judgment. Everyone said that. Please, no judgment.
Yeah.
So I think
all individual, we handle things differently, but to say, oh, well, I had a friend who had it worse. Like, you don't want to hear that. You just listen. Yeah, you're both
walk with the person where they are.
That's great advice for anybody going through anything,
We would both, Kristen and I would both say, grab a journal, even if it's some crappy old composition journal, and just start jotting down. Just jot down your thoughts, your memories. It's amazing what you forget, and that might really be helpful for you to revisit later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
whether or not you're writing a book.
Yeah. What do you think grieving moms and actually grieving parents have in common?
That's such a good question. I
think we've talked about being in the club that nobody wants to be in.
Yeah, I think I'm imagining what we all have in common is this incredibly rich inner life, this world that we have created for our missing children that no one would know is inside of us. As Carol said, the both of us still, mark the lives of our children, and Carly would be 18 soon, and so that doesn't go away. But I'm imagining that's true for a lot of grieving parents, that they're out in the world and they're living their lives and they're fine and happy. And yet inside is this whole chunk of our hearts, of my heart, that is dedicated to this little being that really I only got to know because I was the pregnant one. And it's real, and it's there, and it's not going to go away. And you know, I don't know what else to say. I'm imagining that I'm not the only one who carries it. It doesn't even feel like a burden. It just feels like it's this thing that's right underneath the surface.
Yeah.
Kind of all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard a psychiatrist on a show. He was very, he has these very formal books about processes that people go through and all this kind of stuff. And then somebody asked him about his own adult son who had been murdered. And he said, well, he is still with me. I talk to him. I consult with him. I ask him. I feel I hear from him. And this is one of these like super high powered people who you would never expect, some kind of psychiatric manual. And here he is talking about his child in this way. And I think this is different from, you lose. I mean, I've lost my mother and my father now long since, long after losing Malcolm. And, I keep in touch with them, and that sort of makes sense. They were older. They're the kind of the elders in this situation. But when it's the young ones, I think they just can become incredible spiritual guides for us.
Yeah, I believe that. Carol, what tell us about your workshops, because I really want to sign up. Journaling workshops. What do you do?
Oh, well, at the moment, since everything is on Zoom, and I did an awful lot of workshops on Zoom over the past year. So I'm currently not starting any new ones, but I'm hoping to go back to live very soon. But I'm getting pressure to do a few more Zoom writing workshops. So if anybody wants to know, just go to my website, carolhenderson.com, and you'll see what I have upcoming. I mean, I used to offer them in medical centers and people could just drop in. And I don't know if I'll ever get back to that. I have stuff from that all the way to a group that I've been working with for 20 years, and we travel together, and we wrote one book, we're going to be writing another book, and they're part of a particular workshop. So, I mean, I wish I could say I had something you could come to this Saturday, but I'm not there right now. I have a lot of other.
Well, the pandemic is teaching us patience. So we'll be patient, Carol, and we're waiting. Yeah. I'm going to ask Kristen another question, but if you have any questions, please put it in the space bar on the bottom there where it says ask question. We also have a green button where you can buy the book. And because of the pandemic, we're offering signed book plates from Carol and Kristen. So Kristen, what are you writing?
I have ideas. You wouldn't know this from reading my book, because my book is, it's not light reading. But I actually like writing humorous things. And so I have an idea of a series that I want to write about. I know my significant other is in the room. I can see his name, but we're both middle-aged, and we are joining forces and going to merge our homes soon. And it's a huge deal for both of us. And I have a sort of humorous perspective on what it's like to be, what am I calling it? Like wounded, weary, and weathered, starting life again with someone else when you're wounded, weary, and weathered. So I want to do something completely different than what my book was about. Different tone, different subject.
Tell some fun stories about that, because it is, you get into these habits and you become your parents, which is frightening.
My mother too. I would be like my mother, so she's scared too.
My dad sleeps with a black dress sock over his eyes. If I start doing that, people, I'm just done. But we do become our parents. Does anybody have any questions at all? And I'm looking forward to your book, your new book, Kristen. So
thank you.
Do we flabbergast everybody? I think we may have. Well, again, buy the book button is on the bottom here. I appreciate you bearing your souls with us in the books. And Kristen, tell them the name of your book.
From the Lake House, A Mother's Odyssey of Loss and Love.
And Carol?
Losing Malcolm, A Mother's Journey Through Grief. And then I have another one farther along, The Writing Journey of 13 Bereaved Mothers. And that's that's more of a collaborative book. So with lots of writing prompts in it, if people are looking for ways to get started. So.
Well, again, these books have a permanent home on my bookshelves here at the store, and I hope you all write something today. We have your books in stock. We can send out, we're going to be getting some book plates, and I can't thank you all enough. We are going to be posting this up on our YouTube page at page158books.com. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope we helped at least one person today, but I think we have many. I can't thank you enough, Kristen and Carol. You were wonderful. I really want to take a writing workshop with you. I only write Facebook posts, which are horrible, and I make tons of spelling mistakes. So I really need some help.
That's one thing about a journal. You can make all the mistakes you want.
And
it doesn't matter. It can all be cleaned up later.
And it's just for you.
Right, Kristen? You can
It's great.
Clean it up.
Hair down.
But you can begin to make a coherent narrative of your situation if you start by journaling. And maybe everybody could just take a few minutes and journal about how they felt about this experience, about listening to this. That might be a starting place. And what in their lives have they lost recently or long ago that they might want to spend a little bit of time writing about.
My mother gave me the best advice once. She said, if you're mad at somebody, write them a letter. You don't have to send it, but it gets all of your feelings out there. So journaling is even more intimate, and it describes your life to you, and you can look back on parts of your life where you were going through something and know how much you've grown and how much hope you have for the future too. So
I want to say that the for a lot of young people, this probably won't resonate much, but letter writing is a very accessible form. You can write a letter to a person, to an emotion, to a situation.
Rip it up after. You don't have to send it, but
no, gosh, no. Do not hit send. Just write for self. And
I have a whole bunch of letters to people that I've never sent. Some are because I was really angry, and some are not. But it's very effective. It's very empowering.
And it's easy. It's like you know exactly who your audience is, and that's good. And then I sometimes say, to be fair, let the person write back to you. I mean, you write their response back to you.
Oh, I like that.
So that you get another perspective. And one more little thing is write about yourself in the third person sometimes. She, because that also gives you a little remove from yourself. Does everybody, you understand what I'm saying? Like, saying, I went here, I went there. She went there. She did this. She did that. It's kind of like, oh.
Yeah, you can become an observer.
Sassy today. Yeah.
I see there's a comment from Jenny who said, please see my comment if there's time. And
let's see. Where is it at the beginning, I wonder?
The question is a very nice compliment to your book, Carol. She's been reading your book.
Yes, it says, looking forward to Kristen's book. Wanted to say everything Carol said about From the Lake House also goes for Losing Malcolm, our universality. I have never been pregnant, and I could not put Losing Malcolm down. Thank you,
Jen. You're going to feel the same way about From the Lake House. So
yeah,
something wonderful to look forward to.
It's a beautiful book. I have to read yours.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sue, for hosting this.
Thank you.
This is important, and I hope it, like I said to you last night when we were talking, Kristen, if it helps one person, I feel really privileged to be able to help do that. So thank you all. Share it again, and be nice to each other. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you again. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who participated.
Someday we'll meet each other in person. I can't wait to have you at the store.